Just get them to Dr. Watts and go this way?
I didn't know if you needed it.
No.
So this is...
Well, they put it in the wrong spot. It's a non-agenda item. Yeah, he arrowed down. He put it in the wrong spot. Yeah, none of those are on the agenda.
Okay, all right. That helps.
I added that extra. So the agenda item was on the one line and the non-agenda.
Did you change it?
I changed it. There it is.
Oh, okay.
And that way.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Which was the one that, every time I sit in, gradually throughout the night.
Goes down, slowly.
I say that's the worst one. I've had that one before. By the end of the night, I'm like, here's my chin. I know.
Hold the line, trying to move it over. Oh, yes.
Oh, all right, thank you. Yeah. Ready?
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm calling this meeting to order. And I have asked, actually we're reconvening from our executive session and calling the regular meeting to order. And we'd like to ask Mr. John Bruns to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome again to tonight's board meeting. So I'd like to begin with the process for audience participation. This is a reminder, the purpose of the board meetings is for the board to conduct its business in public and not to provide a public forum. Those wishing to comment must complete a comment card with your name, address, and purpose and give it to the board secretary. It should be Dr. Watts before the meeting begins. Comment cards will be accepted tonight until the agenda item 3.01 presentations. So the board may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when it's too lengthy, obscene, or irrelevant. Abusive public comments personally directed towards staff members will not be tolerated. The board as a whole will have the final decision in determining the appropriateness of all such rulings. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. When it is your turn to address the board, please state your name, address at the beginning of your testimony and speak to the right of me, and the podium on the right of me. And identify your organization, if any, that you represent. And please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You will hear a timer when 3 minutes are up, and you will be asked to stop your remarks. Visitors who have completed a comment card indicating a desire to speak to an agenda item will be given an opportunity to speak to the board at the time the item is addressed by the board, and your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. Written material should be submitted to the superintendent's office at least 1 week in advance of the meeting when providing board members with background information per board procedure. All right, and those are the ground rules for us. And if I'd like to ask Dr. Watts if there are any changes to the agenda this evening, please.
Yes, President Venganaslam, members of the board, Ms. Halley. A supplemental personnel report has and minutes, from the September 11th executive session were added to the consent agenda, and there's a printed copy of the supplemental personnel report before you on the dais.
All right, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the change to the agenda and add the supplemental personnel report and minutes to the consent agenda.
I so move.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right. Are there are no discussions or questions? We'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. We are moving to our 2.0 in the agendas, recognition. And we are really excited, and we want to welcome and thank our Kent Kiwanis Club, or the Kiwanis Club of Kent, yes. And we are so thankful to all of you. You have, I think in the last 4 years, provided us with quite a bit of money for our library programs at the Kent Valley Early Learning Center. And we want to take the opportunity to formally recognize and thank you for all your contributions. And tonight, you're giving us a generous donation to the Kent Valley Early Learning Center Library. And I'd like to ask Ms. Vivian Bruns, John Bruns, and Kim Brown, who are in attendance, to present a check to Ms. Lisa Novotny. Is she here? Is it Lisa? Okay, thank you. Who's a teacher librarian at Kent Valley Early Learning Center. So, if you'd like to come up. Okay. If you'd like to say a few words, we'd love to have you speak. And I'll stay here.
We would like to thank the school board, the school district, for actually allowing us to have one of our fundraisers at French Field. Kiwanis Club of Kent proudly does the concessions through the football season, which supplies us with many of the funds that we use to help students in our Kent school districts. Our club is 87 years old. 88. That's why I bring my husband. 88 years old, and for 30 plus of those years, we have done the 7th and 8th grade essay contest. That's one of our signatures that we enjoy doing. Many of you, and Maya, I know you've missed hardly any of them ever, attend, and so we'll be doing that again this March. We're very thrilled to do that. One of the things that we do is we read to a lot of the, all of the students at Birch Creek once a year. This is Kim Brown's committee, gets the books at Scholastic Book Warehouse and puts them together and gets a gang together, and we go up and read and present each child with a book. We also have the privilege the last few years to do it at the Kent Learning Center. And it was brought to our attention that they were trying to enhance their library. So we thought maybe we could find a way to help do that. So here we are with Lisa tonight. Very proudly would like to present you with the $500 check from our club to enhance your library, and hope that that can serve. John's going to get a picture for our website.
One more.
Maya, get in here. Thank you, John. So it is with great pleasure that we can do that for you guys. And we hope to work together very often.
Thank you very much.
A lot more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Watts, committee.
Yes, please.
I want to thank the Kiwanis Club of Kent for investing into the Kent Valley. And on behalf of the students and the families and the staff at Kent Valley Early Learning Center, thank you. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you with funds and volunteers. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Bruns and Mr. Brown, if we'd like for you to stay until we take photos. If you wouldn't mind staying for another 5 minutes, we have another proclamation, okay? All right. We are going to 2.02 proclamations for the September Attendance Awareness Month.
So whereas good attendance is essential to student achievement and high school graduation, and we are committed to reducing chronic absenteeism rates with the focus of starting as early as pre-kindergarten. Whereas chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, including excused and unexcused absences, or just 2 or 3 days a month, is proven predictor of academic struggle and dropout rate. Whereas improving attendance and reducing chronic absence takes commitment, collaboration, and tailored approaches to particular challenges and strengths in each community. Whereas research shows that chronic absence as early as pre-kindergarten and kindergarten is associated with a lower third grade reading scores, 6th grade course failure, and an increased dropout rate for 9th graders. Whereas chronic absence can be significantly reduced when schools, parents, and communities work together to monitor and promote good attendance and address the hurdles that keep children from getting to school. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Kent School District proclaims that our schools will stand with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to high student achievement and reducing chronic absenteeism to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially.
Thank you. So we'd like to call Ted December? Yes, Ted. Senior Resident Services Manager for Educational Initiatives at King County Housing Authority, to accept the proclamation.
Good evening, esteemed members of the board, President Vang Dasalam, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. Through King County Housing Authority programs, 20,000 children across the county have a roof over their head tonight, and in Kent, that's over 3,500 alone. We at KCHA are committed to not only ensuring families have affordable, high-quality housing options, but also supporting the academic and life outcomes of the youth and families we serve, and we're honored to have Kent School District as a partner in that work. To this end, we're engaged in many efforts to support families and youth, and one of the primary focuses of our work are aimed at reducing chronic absenteeism. Our goal is simple. At KCHA, we want to see children prepared to succeed in college, career, and life. School attendance is a key part of that equation for academic success, and simply put, if a child is not in school, they miss out on learning. We at KCHA are pleased that Kent School District has made this proclamation tonight, step not many districts in our region have made, and we're grateful to not only have the school district, but also the city as Kent as strategic partners in raising awareness about the importance of school attendance. Together as partners and as a community, we have a lot to work to do on this front. Last year, nearly 3,800 students from Kent missed more than 20 days of school. Though, through these aligned, intentional efforts, we can reduce that number because, as the district's messaging reminds us, attendance today affects achievement tomorrow. So, thank you very much.
Now our Kiwanis group to come for a photo, and then after that, Ted and all those who are here regarding attendance. Right, we are up to our 3.0 presentations, and if there are no more cards, we will be closing the cards at this point.
Oh, here comes one.
All right, good time. Thank you. All right, we're up to our strategic plan steering committee recommendations for 2018-19. And I'd like to call on Dr. Joel Harmon and Melissa Laramie to introduce the steering committee members who will present their recommendations to the board for 2018-19. And following that will be some photographs.
Of course.
So please wait before you leave. Thank you.
Sorry?
Assistance?
Yeah, well, they were before. No, I do need you.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Venkadasalam, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley, it is a pleasure to be here. This is something that is called for in our strategic plan, and it's something that this community group has spent quite a bit of time working on. And so I am pleased to share the honor of introducing our strategic plan steering committee for 18-19 as they get ready to present the 18-19 priority initiatives to you that they've worked on. And so first up will be Austin.
Hello, I'm Austin Freeman. I'm a senior at Kent Ridge High School. I would first of all just like to recognize the rest of the strategic plan committee if they can maybe raise their hands. Yes, so this goes under the why and how. So the why and how, why we are here, and the whole purpose. So there's an existing strategic plan. We met for 12 times over the summer on Monday nights. Our purpose is to do recommendations, to go through the entire blueprint, the entire strategic plan from each of the 4 goals. It was a very tumultuous, very difficult task with a lot of community driven. There were around 74 who had access to the OneNote, and we had around between 12 and 16 who came. And there was Jewel and Melissa there every night to guide us on what goal are we going to tackle next, what is the metrics, what are we doing. So the involvement by KSD was limited to what is the tracks, do we need to stay back on conversation, how are we using our 2 hours. There were a lot of robust and courageous conversations. A wide variety of diverse opinions were honored, especially when we had students and current KSD staff, variety of people from other foundations and people from the community, and also parents were all involved in the recommendations of the strategic plan. We identified priorities, we reached consensus through discussions and voting, and okay, so at the end of every goal we would come up with, here's the list of kind of 10 metrics for each goal that we would then vote and narrow it down to 5. So moving forward about, again, who and when. So these members were invited to each of the meetings. We had around 77 community members signed up to participate, and that went down to 12 and 16. Between each week it would vary. There were some weeks where it was just 6 of us, other weeks when a lot of us showed up, but at each of the 11 meetings there was a core group of in-person attendees of 16 individuals representing a wide variety of people, and we have come up with recommendations for each of the 4 goals. So I would like to now introduce Jacqueline.
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline Henley, and I am the administrative intern and education assistant at Horizon Elementary. And I have the privilege of promoting and providing for you our recommendations based on all 4 of the goals. So for goal number 1, preparing all students to be career and college ready, we really centered on priorities that weren't already given to you in terms of our accountability reporting. And so of those, we wanted to highlight K2 math and K2 literacy, high school credit accumulation, and entrance into post-secondary college. And we also had one that really struck a chord with our team around 3rd grade benchmark. We talked a lot about the research that exists around school to prison pipeline and how important that 3rd grade year is in terms of literacy. And so we wanted to bring that to your attention as well. And then keeping in mind our whole student package, we talked a lot about social emotional learning and wanted to bring that to you as a priority, looking at not only what curriculum and resources we're using in order to teach students about social emotional skills, but also then measuring that and asking how our students are feeling in terms of those social emotional skills, as we know that that social emotional piece is really important in terms of our academic achievement, and so we wanted to highlight that for you as well. For goal number 2, we had a lot of conversation, and we actually revisited this goal probably 5 or 6 times, including tonight. And this is probably not new to you either. We really wanted to highlight honest, open, transparent communication and accountability. And with that being said, we took it upon ourselves to potentially write ourselves into the strategic plan process. In the past, this team has met for a short period of time, like we did over the summer, and we would really like it to be a priority for this team. And I know that all of my committee mates would be willing to do this as well, to meet more regularly throughout the year, not only to improve our process in terms of recommendations and getting more voices to the table to provide recommendations to you, but also to be more of a team player and a stakeholder in this process, and receiving more feedback from you as well. So we wanted to highlight that for you. We wanted to make sure that we're communicating with all of our constituents, especially in different languages. And we took a deep look at the PASA program in terms of parent, guardian, extended family support, and we wanted to look at some alternatives to the PASA program that not only were fiscally solvent, but also had more long-term parent engagement that could last throughout the year and that could be replicated at multiple schools. For goal number 3, creating effective and organizational systems, we, of course, highlighted the budget and the funding, which is probably not new news to you, but we also wanted to shine a light on our student mobility, especially around our ELL populations and our students who are immigrants. We wanted to provide some data not only to our communities, but also our staff on what those mobility rates are so that we can begin having conversations around what kind of welcome systems we have for students as they move from school to school, whether they're entering the KSD for the first time or just going between buildings, and how we can be more on top of supporting those, because we know that we do have a high mobility rate amongst our student population. We connected our first priority for goal number 3, support of high-need students, back to that social emotional piece in our first goal, especially serving students of trauma and preparing our staff, no matter what environment they work in the district, to really handle the needs of those students and be most supportive as possible. And then last, connecting our 4th and 5th priority, disciplined disproportionality, and our district stances in terms of restorative justice and how we are educating all of our staff members and really working to keep our kids in classes as much as possible and out of our discipline reporting systems. For goal number 4, recruiting and retaining diverse and premier workforce, we started first with talking about making sure that we are making KSD a desirable district to work in for all of our staff, no matter what work group they work in, by providing competitive salaries and also driving our retention rates. So that is salaries that not only look desirable in terms of what our cost of living is in this area, but also to our comparative districts in the local area. And in tandem to that, talking about what systems we have in place to grow our own staff, whether it be our students or staff that are in other positions that might be great teachers or leaders or administrators or para support or bus drivers, whatever role. What systems do we have in place to provide our staff professional development, recruit, and feed our own system throughout our different departments? And then last of all, we talked a little bit about instructional coaches. I know a lot of our buildings have lost our instructional coaches in terms of support, so looking at what we can do to return those critical positions so that we can provide professional development for all of our staff, no matter what building or level they're at, elementary or secondary.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alexia Dorsch. I'm obviously one of the members of the steering committee. I'll just say I'm a community member. I have no other connection really to the Kent School District. I'm not a teacher or staff or anything of the sort, just community. So there were definitely some key themes. One of the first ones that we came across when we were going through the existing blueprint is there were a lot of numbers in there that we couldn't figure out what they meant. We didn't understand value behind them. We didn't know where they came from, et cetera. So one of the themes throughout our meetings was whittle that all down and let's make sure that we're using things that, one, are measurable and two, are achievable, that we're clear on what they mean, that we present that, again, to the community at large and get continuous feedback on that. I know, I actually don't need to think about it. I know that I can speak for the entire committee when I say that all of us thoroughly enjoyed this process. It was difficult. We had difficult conversations. There was an unbelievable amount of respect in the room at every single meeting. And so because of that, we were able to have these open conversations also with admin employees. And we all concluded that simple is better, as long as it covers everything. And another common theme, as Jacqueline pointed out, was we included ourselves in the process. So every time we talked about two-way communication, every time we talked about transparency, we felt like we had to be an example of that, both within the room and with the board and with all aspects of the district. So hopes and fears was actually another common theme in all of our meetings. I'll say that there's definitely concern that this entire document is just to check a box, that it will be published, approved, and it will sit. And it will not be used for measuring anything. That is a concern. Is it based on anything? Don't know. Not for me personally, but it is a concern. So that's part of the reason why we would like to include ourselves in the process. We want there to be accountability all the way around. We want there to be checks and balances, as there should be, all the way around. I think that sums it up. I will say personally that I greatly appreciate this opportunity. As they pointed out, there were 70-some people who expressed interest, but there was a core group of about 16 who regularly showed up, and our schedule was self-imposed from the first meeting, and we self-imposed our continued involvement. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. And I've already seen a few things in the last few days that tell me that we're doing it. It's going to be one step at a time, but we're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? All right, let's start from Denise. Okay.
I really appreciate all of the work that you guys have put into this. When we were looking at this, I had a question about, well, is it appropriate to ask questions about what we were talking about with regards to K2 and those things, or is that the recommendations? So I know that we were looking at K2 and then third grade, and then there was kind of a jump to high school. And my concern was that, since there is no through line from third grade to graduation rates, because we know there's a huge dip that usually happens in middle school, I would love to see data around what are we measuring in middle school? How can we get those snapshots of those kids?
So one of the things that we established early on in this process is that there's a lot of data that OSPI, for instance, accumulates, and it's just par for the course, and it's already there. Our focus was to identify metrics that aren't already covered, that aren't already addressed, but could be measured and do have meaning. And we just went back to what we know and what research shows, and that's why the K2 and the third grade are part of that, because there's such a direct correlation between how kids are doing at that age and then how they do in the future. And the high school credit accumulation is also a much larger subject than just what's listed here. I believe they gave you probably our laundry list of what goes into this. So don't think that we don't recognize middle schoolers. We do. It's just limited to space and numbers.
Yes.
So that data is already reported through our SBOS scores for middle school, and so that information would already be presented to you. So we wanted to highlight other areas that weren't necessarily given to you in terms of data or reported by OSPI that could highlight different areas that we thought were important.
Thank you.
All right. I'm really excited about the things that you've outlined for Goal 3, the support for high needs students, the student mobility. Budget funding, yes, that's always there, but it's the things that flank it, the discipline, disproportionality, and restorative justice. I'm really excited that we're going to be focusing on that. You're going to be focusing on that. And that's some of the areas that our kids fall down on, and then they fail. And so if we can work on those areas, I think it'll be just terrific. Thank you.
I have a general question, because I'm sure as you went through this, you got a lot of lists, but you obviously didn't have enough for everything. You had to make trade-offs. So the short question with a lot of answers is, why are these the best metrics now compared to what we've been looking at the past? So why are they better than what we've been looking at, in your opinion?
Yes. I can speak a little bit to, I know, kind of, I guess, the way the process, and that is at the end of kind of looking at the 2 pages in the strategic plan, we would come up with kind of a list of like, each of us independently would come up with our 5 things that we really like about each goal. And then we'd have a really long conversation about it, and then we would all kind of vote on it. We each got 3 votes, and then the top 5 were the ones that we all came together. And then there were some where we came up with 6 or 7, and we had to narrow it down. I believe Alexia can speak a little bit more to the whole, we generated a term WAC metrics that really, things that stand out, really things that we, among our viewpoints, really like to, so. And
well, sort of.
Yes.
So the WAC metrics are, again, the metrics that either really don't have any meat behind them, aren't really things that need to be measured. There's no starting data and potential ending data, if that makes sense. So certain things are assessed now, but they weren't last year. Well, okay, great. Moving forward, we can use that, but why are we comparing apples to oranges? So that's sort of the WAC metrics. Whatever. And to also add to her point, some of us try taking liberties and combining goals saying, these are connected. And I was told, that person was told to follow the process, so she got overruled. But the point is, it was a very democratic, diplomatic process, and it was really interesting to see, because most of us, when we went up to vote, we didn't automatically vote for our own suggestions. The other thing is, at one point, we, depending on what is currently in the document, in the plan, at times we just sort of throw it out and said, okay, we're going to start from scratch. We're not even going to take this into account. We're going to think for ourselves, and then we're going to compare what's currently there and what we think could provide the metrics to meet these goals.
To be fair to the steering committee, they were pushed in terms of come with thinking about the 5 things that you would feel comfortable with as a stakeholder, knowing that the district is moving forward, or you feel comfortable. So around this goal, what are the 5 metrics, 5 indicators that the district is doing okay, or that you think that they need to pay attention to? And yes, we forced them to do 5, not 5.5, not 7 that were connected to 5. And then when it came time to vote, they were pushed to vote for 3. And they could use their 3 votes any way they wanted. So that means they could weight them on one thing, or they could disperse them across 3 things. And so they were challenged in a way after they discussed them. So they got to defend, they got to explain why they felt it was important. And then they got to this list, and what is exactly what it was intended to be. As a group of community members, what do you think the district should attend to? What do you think is important to the district? What should they focus on moving forward? And so, yes, you were pushed there, but you did the pushing yourselves. We just gave you the parameters of how many and how long.
So I can go back and connect them again?
And I just want to put out there, too, that we did our due diligence in terms of research. We did look at a number of strategic plans in the area. We went through all of our community conversations documents that happened in the spring and matched it to what we had. And I don't think any of these goals really reflect our top 5 priorities that we walked into the door. The one caveat is we're only 16 out of a very large district, and so we need to continue to work to make sure that we're including all of those voices that aren't at the table, and hope that what we came up with does reflect what our community at large does. We think we did a pretty good job, but there's obviously a lot of opportunity for growth there.
This may be less of a question, more of a encouragement. I like the idea of an ongoing review of what's going on, because when I first look at this, when I first looked at this, we focus on these metrics. I've immediately started thinking of things we're not focusing on and the trade-offs we might be making going forward. But reviewing that the suggested meeting schedule you have here seems appropriate in terms of, okay, if we're looking at this, are we foregoing this, or did something else come up that is now, we'll just add it on there, whatever that is. And so I'm encouraged by having you guys go forward with that. So thank you.
So I had a question as I was reading through the PDF that was provided, where it said like percentage or different things that way. So, but it doesn't say, are you looking at starting at a percentage based off what? So beginning of the year, or have we gotten to that point yet, or?
So given that some of these are new, we're going to call our 18-19 a baseline for some of those metrics. Some of the things that exist, obviously, we'll have history for, but there'll be a baseline. And based on that baseline, we'll set a goal for the district of how far, how fast. Like most plan metrics, then will lead to resource conversations and hows and who's. But for some of these things that are new and measurement will be a baseline of here's where the district is, and now how do we think about moving forward, and what's the right pace for moving forward.
That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to verify that. And then you sparked my interest when you talked a little bit about looking at PASA and what the possibilities are for engagement. And so I'm just wondering how the board will go about finding out more about those recommendations and what that will look like, and kind of what the next steps are, because I'm excited to see what could happen. So
yeah, I can. One thing that I think we all kind of discovered is that PASA, when it existed several years back, was on a grant. And we did our own research, and we find out, oh, it was on a grant, and that grant has run out. And so I think we then really just focused on not a little bit about just surveys, but just parent engagement and support, and what are other ways that you can measure student success. And I know an example of that is my high school tonight has its open house. So that's something that maybe you can measure kind of in the metric number of schools, something like that. But yes, it might not be a complete answer, but we've kind of found something that we discovered in the strategic plan that isn't current, and we want to update that, which is what the whole purpose of our parameters was.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your work. I'm excited to see how we can move forward, so thank you.
Yes, and likewise, I thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I think for a long time we've wanted a committee to have representatives from every corner of the district and have our students, our community, and our teachers and district staff. That's just invaluable to have that in our district. We've been missing that for a long time. So I want to say that first. And then secondly, I want to address the fears part and the notion that this might sit on a shelf, or particularly where it says the lack of board follow-through regarding results and accountability. So I want to address that because one of the things, if you look at our board goals that are being presented tonight, we've made it very clear to district, and we've had several meetings on this, making sure that we have developed a board calendar that has integrated the metrics and the monitoring in every quarter. So we as a board will be meeting with Dr. Watts and staff on a quarterly basis to monitor that, but we'll also be presenting on a quarterly basis to the public on where the progress is going. So I just want to make sure that I address that because I've been part of committees where we've done the work, but it just sat on a shelf. And so just want to value that, and thank you so much for everything.
Sure. Yeah. If I may comment on that real quick. That document and that work that you're doing is one of my examples of what I've seen from the last few days of moving forward and really making progress. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'd like to take a photo opportunity now and join us. Thank you.
What do you guys? Melissa takes the pictures, so why do I have to be in it?
Well, she can pass the camera.
Yeah. Melissa, you're gonna
You're getting this.
This is your group.
No, yours. You have to be.
No. This is.
Yeah, Melissa's coming. You gotta check.
Get all the banners? Oh no. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that's good.
So that's great. Thank you again. And next, we'd like to go to 4.0 Board of Directors discussion and approval. 4.01, our resolution number 1548, authorization for the sale and issuance of unlimited general obligation bonds. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve resolution number 1548.
I so move.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Are there any discussions or questions?
Is this under the assumption that it's the same bond package we've talked about before, and then we're authorizing the maximum limit, and the sale will still commence as the timeline we've looked at previously?
Absolutely. Spend.
Thank you.
I didn't catch the second part of that. Can you say?
Just like, I know this is the beginning, and we're still under the same timeline that we looked
Correct.
at before.
This basically reflects the specs that we went over on August 22nd. And the only thing I would note is that you'll see the resolution authorizes $100 million. We talked about that being a fully upper bound estimate of what might actually be sold depending on market conditions.
Okay. And then not asking, but do you think 100 million is the maximum? We don't need a higher number than that.
It is by resolution, that's all you would be authorizing.
Okay.
So it could not exceed that amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. Next up is our 4.02 board goals, 2018-2019. And I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the board goals for 2018-19.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll
please?
second that.
All right. Are there discussions, questions, comments?
I just personally am excited to see that we're doing our board goals and improving them. One thing that I'd like to ask, if there's some way that maybe we can make sure that we always have a copy on the dais, so they're always something that we see. I know in the past when we've done goals, we've talked about them and then not talked about them till the end, and I know we won't be doing that this time, but I think it's important to be able to see them and have them in front of us.
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone else? Comments? Comments? No? All right. I also want to say this summer we have spent quite a bit of time. I just want to mention briefly the process by which we went about getting our board goals together. Mid-May we had an assessment of the school board, and we had the self-reflection process. And we were pretty dejected by what we found because we were pretty honest with ourselves where we were at. And so that then was the genesis, I think, of all the discussions about the board goals and also our superintendent evaluation and what we wanted to see as a board in how we move our district forward. And so just wanted to be clear that there were a lot of discussions over the summer, starting in mid-May to end of, last week, pretty much before we came up with these goals. So we feel very strongly about it. It has been built into our board calendar so that we make sure we don't skip meetings, we don't ignore what's important, and the public can hold us accountable to that. So that's very important to us. So wanted to share that, and thank you to my colleagues for all the times we've had together and we had put together the goals. So with that, I would like to ask for a motion to approve our board goals for 2019. Oh, call for a vote. All those in favor? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed to say no. All right, and motion passes. We are now up to our 5.0 consent agenda. And I would like to ask the board if you'd like to pull an agenda item for discussion.
Yes, please. I'd like to pull 5.07, 5.08, 5.09, and 5.10, please.
Okay. All right. I'd like to pull all of those and 5.06. Anyone else? All right. Okay, so I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 5.06, 5.07, 5.08, 5.09, and 5.10.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. All right, we are to 5.06. And I have this combined with Director Hardy, so would you like to go first? Or?
Well, I didn't call 5.06, but now that I see it, it's
Okay.
minutes from yesterday's executive session, and there's no attachment, so I have no idea what we're approving.
There is an attachment.
It's not coming up for me
In
either.
the executive. Did I not?
It's not there.
Or not?
That's just it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on the regular agenda.
That's not
No.
there. 5.06.
Oh, I think for me, it just got added in, yeah. It just got added in.
Let me see. I don't have it either.
If you are logged in as board,
Yeah.
it's not uploading, but if you're logged in as your
Oh, okay.
district ID, we'll make sure that that's viewed.
What do we do with that? Do we approve that?
If we can't see it.
We can't approve it without it, so.
If you don't.
Can we just pull it and
Okay.
approve it next
Pull it?
meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So do we need to make a motion to pull?
5.06.
Yeah.
Mr.
Sure.
Sheldon?
I think
Why
we
not?
do need to make a motion to
we
table
need-
it
Yeah.
until
Okay.
next meeting.
All right, okay.
We just want to table 5.06 until the next meeting for approval so it can be posted properly.
Okay, so,
So I so move that we table it.
all right, thank you.
Seconds.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. All right, tabled. Going back to 5.07, 8, 9, and 10. Go ahead, Director Hardy.
I have questions in general regarding the professional service contract, and then we can get into specifics. One is in general, I think that this is just a general statement for professional service contracts, either new contracts for vendors or recontracts or renewals of contracts over our $75,000 threshold. I don't know if this is more of a agenda thing, move those up into a general board discussion and approval rather than on the consent agenda, so we can just review those every time without having to forget to pull them or anything. That's just in general. This one specifically, 5.07, this is a renewal of the contract for communities and schools with Kent. And I just have some general information about the renewal of the contract. How has it changed from last year? Are we increasing, changing any staff? They have staff that they've allocated to us as well as other things. Is anything changing from prior years? Start with that.
Yep, thank you for the question. The first piece is it is a renewal. Services have been provided over the past, in some cases, 5 years or more. But the renewal process sometimes has either new dollars, in this case, new funding grants, and we often combine them. You'll see that they were listed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it increases services, and sometimes the content is changed. I'll let Mr. Heath talk specifically if there are any changes from the renewal for this one.
Yes, we always try to leverage dollars around with communities and schools. We've been partnered for a number of years. This year, one of the major changes is we received the Best Starts for Kids grant for screening, brief intervention, referred to treatment or supports. And they were communities and schools was a part of going for that grant together with us, with King County, and so they are providing a half-time case management person at 5 of the middle schools, a full-time one at Mill Creek. And so in addition to that, there are services that are being provided through Readiness to Learn dollars, and those are consistent with ones we've had in the past. This year they're going to be used at Kent Lake and Kentwood, and a small portion over at Kent Phoenix Academy as well, to combine with some funds that the principal over there had as well.
As much as you know, are these grants applicable to the 18-19 year only, or are they beyond?
The Best Starts for Kids grant should go 3 years. We have some requirements of reporting every year that would be contingent on us getting it the following years, but we anticipate yes.
Okay, thank you. That was all my questions.
I didn't have it, no, the same ones I wanted
okay.
pulled, but I didn't
Okay.
have any questions. I was like,
Okay.
what's been answered?
All right. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. The first one is, I'm trying to understand. I know we've had a lot of these are renewals, so we've had our contracts with many of these. I did want to ask about the sound supports and how it's related to PBIS. That's my first question. How they're related, and it says it's a renewal. So was it the PBIS that we renewed, or the PBIS contract, or is this separate?
Yeah, remember PBIS, MTSS, basically PBIS is the behavior side of multi-tiered systems of support. And so Sound Support has actually been working with us. This will be the third year in a row that Sound Support has worked with us. 2 years ago, they helped us to craft our 5-year implementation plan and led us through that process. And then last year, because we were not able to hire some coaches that were part of that implementation plan, we contracted with them to do supports out in the schools. And this year, because of some of the funding, some of the staffing issues that we faced, we were able to hire one of the 3 coaches. But once again, 2 of the coaching positions remained unfilled. And so we are going to contract with Sound Support to fill 2 of those coaching roles, along with the 3rd one that we have at in our community.
So before was PBIS, were they providing trainers to?
No, PBIS is just the name of a framework around MTSSB.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So my next question is the 4 contracts. I know we've had a funding of LAP, quite a bit of funding of LAP.
Right.
So how are we distributing that amongst the professional services that we have? And are we looking at new contracts, or are we keeping the current ones we have to distribute the LAP funds in particular?
Right. We are continuing some of them. Actually, we'll have at least one contract to the board next time with another organization that we're going to be using some Readiness to Learn funds with. So we're always open and looking at seeing what are the needs, and sometimes the scope of the work that the existing organizations are doing with us has changed over time as the needs change. Yeah.
Mr. Valen, thank you.
I wanted just to add a couple things for the board. LAP, we have 2 funding sources, high poverty LAP, then we have basic LAP. Both of them come with restrictions and amounts and requirements that we can spend for Readiness to Learn. The positive thing that over the years our state legislature has known that we need supports for social emotional learning, and they've allowed a percentage amount for us to utilize those dollars. So back to leveraging the different dollar amounts in conjunction with other grants, that's what we're doing. But I want to point out there are restrictions and percentages and those types of things, so we leverage all of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Heath. Mr. Valen. Great, thank you. So I think that's all the questions we have. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve 5.07, 5.08, 5.09, and 5.10, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. We are up to 6.0, Board of Directors informational, and looking at the July 2018 financial statements. It's provided for information, and no action is required. So we are now up to the communication from the audience, and we have several cards here. As a reminder, we are asking you to limit it to 3 minutes and come to the podium to my right, and please state your name, address, and any organization you belong to. So we will begin with Maina. Oh, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce. Gachugu. Okay. Followed by Vadim Prokashyek, Michael Sovar, and Paramjit Gill and Jasmeet Gill. Thank you.
Is this a mic or, okay. Oh, it is, cool. Thank you. I'm Maina Gashogo. I'm a teacher here at Kent, at Daniel, 6th grade. I got done talking with my students today. I told them I'd be coming to a board meeting. I get nervous with public speaking, so bear with me if I start perspiring or something like that. But I'm here on behalf of just our para team at our school and just throughout the district. They are in the midst of bargaining, I know, with you guys, and I just wanted to share my support for them. Start my class always asking, what are the big questions? So when I was telling my students I was nervous about this, and it's only the first, week and a half of school, they said you should start with a big question. And I was like, that's a good idea. So in all this, the big question was, what would you do? When the pressure keeps growing and the job keeps asking more, what would you do? When you work at a school that has minimal family involvement, which means your role is more vital as a whole being than just as an educator, what would you do? When a teacher cannot handle a specific student but asks you to work with them on a skill that they're struggling with, what would you do? When you get to work and you get managed by layer after layer of supervisors, different strategies, different techniques, and different timelines, what would you do? When you have to work 30 hours at a school, working with kids on your feet all day, and then go home and work 30 more hours in the evenings and on weekends just to make ends meet, what would you do? What would you do if you have to go to the food bank more than your Fred Meyer? What if you found out that other places of employment that didn't help others in their lives or their educational journey paid you far more? What would you do? If you were a part of this district and you felt neglected, what would you do? If you were a para, what would you do? I know there's a lot of big decisions that have to be made far above my pay grade and far above what I tend to think about in my day-to-day. But I do know that our school is filled with adults that are struggling to just make ends meet in an increasingly expensive area. And that's not anybody's fault, but we can do some things to help that. I know really hard things were done over this summer. I know a lot of tension has been had. I know the last thing we want to talk about on either side is having to do with money. But I do want to ask you, what can we do? Because they do for us all day, every day. And if they could just get a little bit more, that would mean a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Vadim Prokashik.
Hello. I want to talk about the school, the
Sorry,
two buses.
please, could you state your name, please?
Yes, Vadim Prokashuk, and I live at 2253 120th Street right here. I want to talk about the two buses that got removed from Martin Sartoon. I wanted to voice my opinion, especially when we had an open house recently, when at least 50 family members showed up to there, and we did talk about the whole bus situation, and everybody, there was a lady that was even crying over there because she says, I was going to that school for so long already, and now they took the buses where, my kids can't even go on the bus, and it's so far away. And I don't know if you guys seen the road, how unsafe it is. We had, I believe, 150 students riding the bus, the two buses, and now only 15 students are walking to school because all of the parents see the dangers of going to school with no path. It's either you're going on a wet grass with a steep hill where I believe either one or two students already fell, or you're walking on the actual road where a car might hit you. So taking away those two buses made this very hard for all of the people that go to that school. If you were at yesterday, you would have seen how many people were concerning their opinion about it. And I cannot let my 5-year-old, I have a 5-year-old girl, I cannot let her go from my house all the way to school because I don't even know if she'll know which directions. Even if I walk with her 5 times, she won't know to, it's not safe for me to leave a 5-year-old child to walk to that school without, thinking that it should be fine. And seeing that only 15 people are now walking to school, all of these parents are just, looking at the situation, and they can't let their child go to school because there's no walkway over there. First of all, it's the walkway, but then the parking lot situation. There's no parking. There's such a minimum of parking left that there's a good 30 minutes wait for just to get to school. I know my wife has to drop them off earlier so they can run to school and then bring in a note why they're late. All of the cars that are parking over there, because there's no other parking. For me, the shortest way is for me to drive through the school to get to work. I have to go all the way to 256 and drive all the way around because that whole street is just standing still. I'm just worried about my child. I have two twin 9-year-olds, and same thing. I just don't feel safe even with all three of them walking to that school for them to be, me letting them go with my heart being like, they're going to be fine, because I just don't see that that would be safe for them to walk. I work at a very big apartment complex. All of the schools that I see are around there. They're literally either across the street from that big complex, or it's all commercial space. So when they're walking, they're usually walking through, small stores or everything, the whole road, everybody sees the kids walking to the school. But here, you're going through small houses, through small streets, through small valleys, through small paths, just to get to school. And I feel that it's not safe, especially with 150 kids. 150 kids on those two buses, that's a lot of people that have to change their complete schedule of work schedule. I can't change my schedule just to take my kids, especially with just me working by myself. So it's hard, and especially with 150 people. So that's what I wanted to voice my opinion right now. I know the parking's hard. Even if you guys do the path, I know that, that they were talking about returning the buses until they fix the path. Yes, we'll fix the path, but the problem is going to be still with the parking. That street is still going to stand there. The kids are still not going to feel safe, even walking with those far distances through the little alleys and all that other stuff. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Michael Silva?
My name is Michael Sovar. I also live in the Meadow Hills neighborhood where we had the buses pulled recently. I did hear that we are getting them back on a temporary basis, and which is great news for us, but we do hear it will be going away again. And my main grievance now is the way in which it was handled. I did learn that they made the decision to withdraw the buses in June. They sent out a letter August 23rd, 1 week before school started. So we were expecting to be able to put our child out and ride the bus, and then be able to take our other 1-year-old son out to his educational opportunities. And we had to completely change our plans because now it takes us a good half hour, 45 minutes to do drop off, and we cannot make it to his 9:15 appointment that we had scheduled for him. I know me and my wife are in a unique position where we always have someone home who can take my child to school, but I did hear lots of our neighbors complaining that they have to be at work. They have to be at work at 8 o'clock, or they have to come home from work at 5 o'clock. They can't be driving their child to school at 9 a.m. and picking them up at 4 p.m. They usually have a grandmother or someone who can stay home and just get the child out to the school bus, and that is doable for them. But with 1 week's notice, they were all asked to get their child to school on a road that everyone determined was not safe. They came and did an assessment on the 7th, I believe it was, and they saw the cars parked all along the side of the road, and everyone involved saw that this is not a safe place to let children walk. I do understand that the buses will be going away at some point in time, and I just ask that the parents in the community be kept aware of what is going on. There's supposed to be a long-term solution. I would like to be involved in knowing what that solution is so that I can provide feedback if the parents in the neighborhood will actually use that solution. Because if you provide a solution that no one uses, like the walking route that we were given, then it's not a solution. And I do know, especially since this is September Attendance Awareness Month, that this has been a struggle for parents to get their students to be on time. And so I just would really like to be kept in the loop and just know what is going on with a little bit, at least more than a week. If I would know, if they knew in June that they were going to be doing it, a simple letter saying, hey, this is a possibility would be great. Because I had no idea, and none of the neighbors had any idea that this was even a possibility that the buses would be going away.
Thank you
So
very much.
my main thing is to be kept in the loop. Thank you.
Right. Paramjit Gill, Jasneet Gill.
I have a same problem of transportation. I am a grandmother of 2 sons of Jasmeet. She is my daughter. She is sick and also got a stroke in 32 years. I am coming from India. I am working as a principal 37 years in India, but no school so far. But this school is so far. I have not no driving license. I go 4 times. One times by foot, 4 times, 45 minutes, 4 times. But it's very difficult and the way is very dangerous. Now the weather is good, but after that the weather is not good, raining, snow. It's very difficult for her and me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Shannon Jeffson Hernandez, Elena Vino Gardova, Mandeep Kuner, followed by Gavin Brooks.
Shannon Jepson Hernandez, Mill Creek Middle School, 620 North Central Avenue. Recently, the teachers union had a unanimous vote requesting the immediate release of services from 2 school board members. This was in addition to our unanimous vote of no confidence in our superintendent. 1 board member wrote a public response to that request. The board positions are chosen by the people. They are not self-appointed privileges one can claim as their right. When the people take notice of poor leadership and decision-making and request a resignation, the honorable thing to do is to respect the people. One of the justifications for not stepping down was the minuscule increase of graduation rates. A fraction of a % increase is hardly worth celebrating. Showing up at school events and smiling for the camera does not qualify as engagement with the community. Speaking when invited or sending out well-written public communications that have no teeth are not how one gets involved with their schools. Rattling off a list of warm fuzzies at the end of every board meeting does not prove you care. To be a leader is to personally initiate programs for the highest need students and then lead components of those programs. This is where intentions become authentic and transparency is born. If not, then words like community involvement or transparency or open communications are just word candy. Back in the spring, the school discipline report showed identified numbers through May only. It showed discipline was up for our Latino boys. It showed this was a trend in some schools, but not all schools. The same schools where the LEAP program was pulled due to budget reasons, but there was no alternative replacement program. Since then, we have also seen reports showing dropout rates and graduation rates for boys of color. Has anyone bothered to connect the dots? At that meeting, we were told the district would use systemic data to drive decisions. I publicly stated I was excited with the announcement. In fact, everything I am saying, I said at that board meeting. Sadly, this is one of many small fires set last year that is still burning. The changes in iGrad are a clear example of how decisions are made without systems thinking. Supposedly, LEAP is coming back, but is going to be in Kent Ridge, Kentwood, Kent Lake, Kent Phoenix Academy, and not Kent Meridian or Mill Creek or Meeker. How can you make decisions to benefit the least needy schools if you were truly using systems thinking? Then your decisions would not be disproportionate to the number of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. They would not be disproportionate to the number of students identified as survivors of trauma. Every single intervention I have seen in schools has been directly led by a teacher, a community member, a school level administrator, and now the steering committee. but not one have I seen that has been the brainchild of a school board member. When our graduation rates for boys of color are dropping, but everyone is celebrating overall fractions of a % increase, it begs the question, does our leadership even have a clue about what these students actually need, but more importantly, do they care? Because where I'm standing, your actions are not backing up your words. While you talk about social emotional learning, we're actually doing something about it. You say the public can hold us accountable for your goals. Does that mean board members will voluntarily resign if they do not meet these goals by the end of this year?
All right. Yelena Vinogradova?
Yes.
Gradova?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening. So, my name is Yelena Vinogradova. I represent the parents from Martin Sartun School. So, this is my neighbors. We have a problem this year. So, I'm so proud that my kids attend the Kent School District. I have 2 daughters. Old one is like graduation 2 years ago, and my younger one just started her sixth grade. So, and this year it's very hard. The school starts hard because we extremely need school buses. So this several weeks, it's just hard time for whole neighborhood. So a lot of years in a row, we have bus for sure. We know that bus will come, and this year not. So please, I ask you from my heart, please return the school buses because we extremely need. Those people explain more clear why, and I just can express voices other parents. We need it. We extremely need it. Thank you.
Mandeep Kunar?
Hi. She's sitting right behind me. Her English is not that well, so she wanted also to say her concerns about the bus also. She has 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, that she also does not feel safe letting them go to school just a distance. Her husband is a long hauler truck driver, so he's gone sometimes for a week periods of time, and she works really early at, I believe, 8 o'clock, so she cannot take her kids all the time. She is asking my wife to bring the kids in, and we have to make 2 trips just to bring our kids and her kids over to the school districts. She's also wants to, voice her opinion about that she would like the buses back also. And looking at the same thing as you guys want to make the school better for the attendance, for the children to be and attending to the school and not being late and all that stuff. I think this is going to be a big problem because I think lots of kids are going to be late just because of due to parking issues and schools. So I wanted to bring that up also. All right, thank you.
And our final speaker is Gavin Briggs.
Hello, my name is Gavin Briggs. I live just a little bit south of Kent Ridge. I'm a sophomore at Kent Ridge. I went to Meeker Middle School and Emerald Park Elementary, and I noticed today when we got up and said the Pledge of Allegiance, like the whole room got up and everybody said the Pledge of Allegiance, and that actually surprised me a little bit, just because like I realized that that's what's supposed to happen, but I've noticed that through elementary school, most everybody got up, and then I realized thinking back towards middle school and high school, a lot of students don't understand like the importance, and I understand that there's been a lot of controversy, especially in the last year, surrounding the Pledge of Allegiance and everything, but I do think it's still important that, as everyone in this room demonstrated today, that we do respect these national symbols and everything. And I think it also speaks to the lack of knowledge that students these days have about state and national and local politics in general. I'm part of the Kenridge JSA Club, which is one of the political clubs in the district for students. I'm aware of that Kentwood at least doesn't have one. I don't know about any other districts or any other schools in the district. But I just feel that it's important that students understand politics in general, just because this is one of the only places that they might be able to learn accurate and unbiased politics. Because news streams and politicians come off as very biased sometimes, and I just feel it's important that we emphasize the importance of learning about state, local, and national politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our legislative update from Director Hardy, please.
Thank you. Well, since we last met three weeks ago, legislature's not in session, but there is some updates, pockets of updates. I mean, for the most part, our legislatures locally are up for re-election, as well as new people seeking it. So they're obviously looking for input. But I actually got an important update courtesy of the Tacoma School Board today. So we've been through, all districts have been through a lot regarding what happened in the short session earlier this year. And as I've said here before, you know, in terms of the McCleary decision itself, the state has met their burden according to the court, and they think that they've done everything for every school district. But it's, in my opinion, been clear that it's not necessarily equitable for all school districts, and other legislators think so. So as a priority for legislative update, legislative priority for the next session, I know some school districts are focusing on specific changes that can help this inequity, specifically referring to the new funding model, the local limitations on levies. So we haven't necessarily set any priorities as a district as I know of, but I'd say this is our opportunity to begin that process. As the long session, it's got a while before it starts, but when we think about, we can provide input into WASDA for their legislative priorities, but they're primarily statewide. And so if we're looking to correct inequities in the funding model that are disproportionately affecting larger but not necessarily high asset earning districts, that we can look at setting our legislative priorities to help fix that funding model as we go forward. And that other districts have. So this is where I heard our colleagues in Tacoma mention that they have reached out to their local legislatures, and they have already got that on their agenda for the next session. So it is out there that even though we just overhauled the state school funding model, that they're still looking to work on it and tweak it as we go forward.
Yes, I will add, we are going to be represented at the WASDA Legislative Assembly, and we are getting priorities, but I think we can definitely represent our local area and support what we want to see in our area. So I hope we can gather that information from everybody. I will turn it over to Dr. Watts for the superintendent report.
Yes, thank you, President Vengadaslam, members of the board, Ms. Howley, community, staff, friends, to continue the politics and education theme. I think it's not lost on any of us that, and I've said this before, that if you think you know that education and politics, if you think they're mutually exclusive, then you probably think you can swim without getting wet. Politics and education are one and the same, and it's what we're hearing. It's not just about learning what initiatives, what funding, priorities we need to focus on. It's also how do we share our experiences, what happens on day-to-day, boots on the ground in Kent School District or the other 294 school districts, to help influence our legislative officials so that decisions can be made that are representative of the voices that are here. And so we are planning, as we do each year, to have those conversations with our legislative officials to help drive this agenda that is critically important. As we think about our own local politics, we know that access and opportunity is also important. We've heard this evening, and I want to take a personal point of privilege to say that staff will be touching base and connecting with those individuals who have spoken about our transportation challenge and opportunity at Martin Sortoon. While we have as you've heard, and I will confirm that we do have short-term solutions, and I want to thank our staff who have come together to derive a short-term solution with the interest of safety for our walkers and our families. At the same time, a long-term solution will be communicated by the end of this month. We want to make sure that students are safe, that they can arrive on time, and we certainly are sensitive to what's been expressed this evening. So I want to continue to pledge we will keep you as board updated, and just as importantly, keep our families updated as soon as we have additional information. The other point I would like to say thank you to those who are represented still by our strategic planning steering committee, to our staff who have helped facilitate, specifically to Melissa Laramie and Dr. Jewel Harmon. This is a team effort. I've asked in mixed company, whether it's in general public or our leaders, to raise your hand if you can recite all 4 of our strategic goals and understand what they mean, or if you can recite 3 of them, or 2, or 1. Well, majority of the time, 99% of our staff can recite at least 1, and that's a start. But the reality is, this conversation that I had the opportunity to have tonight, just to thank our steering committee members for their contribution, for their time, for the devotion, and obviously their commitment to ensuring that we are going to be better as a result of our metrics, more importantly of making sure that we not just reach them, but that we can exceed them. With that, I look forward to our continued work together. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Watts.
Absolutely.
Director Daniel.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to all that are here. I'm excited that school is back in session. So all of the staff, you are appreciated, teachers, support staff. Without you, our kids would not be able to start the year and be successful. So I appreciate that, and I hope you have an amazing year. I'm looking forward to it. I have 2 students still in school, so I'm looking forward to their year as well. Thinking about the work that we've done over the last few months, I really want to just really acknowledge the fact that, most of us here have families, we have folks at home, and in addition to our full-time jobs, a lot of the people here spend hours and hours, and some have spent weekends, helping to try and make things better for our kids. And I just really am saddened that sometimes that's not recognized and appreciated. And so I just really want to take the time to thank all of the staff that has worked so hard over the last several months, giving up time from their families, and the emotional state that's spent. It's hard work and it's a lot of work, and sometimes it feels as though it is not appreciated. And so I really just want to take the time to say thank you to our staff. And our folks that have been working hard, our steering committee, folks that give of their time and extra. I really hope that we would do a really good job recognizing. Sometimes it's just really nice to say thank you, for people to hear thank you. Although you might not agree with everything that's happening, the fact that people are working extremely hard to try and make things better for all of our kids. We do have kids. I think people sometimes forget we're parents, and we're community members, and we're volunteers, and we're all of the things that many of you sitting out there are. I just really want to acknowledge that work, and I would hope that, I'm not the only one to say thank you to our staff and to those people that have been working really hard for us. So I'm looking forward to a wonderful year, and I wish you all the same. Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Denise.
I want to address KEA's call for me to step down from the board. I've asked people several times over the last year to be careful about making assumptions and then to believe that these assumptions are actually the truth. I'm basing what I'm about to say in facts that can be verified. I know that there are people out there who won't be open to hearing these things, but I hope that the majority of people will be. The first assumption that I was given from KEA that they were calling for me to step down, that I was one of two people, was that the two of us were the driving force on the 3.1% starting place on the negotiations. Fact is that 5 board members set the parameters all the way through negotiations, not 2 people. 5 board members reset parameters as negotiations proceeded, not 2. 5 board members, all 5, voted to approve the KEA contract. All board members have the same amount of power. The officers may have more responsibility, but no more power than any of the rest of us. The second point is that the 2 board members had, quote, steadfastly, unquote, supported Dr. Watts, and the assumption apparently is that supporting the superintendent is wrong. Fact is that no one else except individual board members knows what constructive conversations we have had with Dr. Watts. Under Dr. Watts' leadership, 2 years ago in the spring of 2016, we started with cost-saving measures that would keep the cuts away from the classrooms, meaning the teaching staff. It wasn't enough because 85% of our budget is spent on people, contracts that were already in play. Under Dr. Watts' leadership, we have a race and equity policy that is being placed at the heart of all of our decisions. Under Dr. Watts' leadership, teachers now have the weekly early release time to collaborate. Teachers had been asking for extra time for years. Under Dr. Watts' leadership, we have stopped the 4-year budget decline with a $7.4 million savings in 2017-18 by implementing some tough, necessary, and unpopular measures. Under Dr. Watts' leadership, our 4-year graduation rate is at 82.8%, the highest it's been in years. When that was announced at our meeting in August, 1 person clapped. 1 person. 5 board members worked on and came to consensus and signed the addendum to Dr. Watts' contract. The third assumption was that we disrespected teachers because all we cared about was the fund balance. Fact is that 5 years ago in 2013, KEA and the district negotiated a 3-year contract because we wanted our teachers to have commensurate compensation with surrounding districts. We actually surpassed most of them. The other 7 unions had Me Too clauses, which allowed them to reopen negotiations for compensation. All of them received raises too. We were never advised that these contracts weren't sustainable into the future when revenues were hoped for, but unpredictable. They weren't sustainable. Fact is, on July 6th of this year, State Superintendent Chris Reichdahl announced, quote, wide open collective bargaining, end quote, for teachers' salaries using the big influx of money given by the legislature. A month later in August, Superintendent Reichdahl issued new guidelines telling districts to stay within means and not to negotiate unsustainable salary increases that would throw their budgets out of balance in the long term. He emphasized that there is a, quote, practical limit to bargaining, end quote. Reichdahl reminded school districts of the new accountability rules, including the requirement that all districts submit 4-year projection plans, plans which his office will consider when ranking districts' financial health. Our financial team worked and reworked our 4-year projection as negotiations progressed. We are now projected to be in a deficit in year 3, 2020 to 2021. Of all the people who spoke to the board this summer, only 2 people asked us to make sure that what we negotiated was sustainable. The school district exists for the sole purpose of educating our students, which includes supporting those people who teach them. All 5 board members must care about the fiscal health of KSD. It's our responsibility. This isn't about disrespect. It's about being practical. There is work to do for our students, especially those of the 17.2% who didn't graduate in 4 years and those who are following them. I will continue to be a part of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to kind of repeat the theme I like to do in this board report over the summer, which is inform the public and remind the board of the work that we have done and the work we have to do, similar to what Denise talked about. We've done a lot of work on the things that only we can do, which is budget, which is our goals, which is superintendent goals. But we are not yet done. And so the reminder that even though we passed the budget, The amended budget, even though we did the big KA agreement, we're not done yet. And we have more to do to settle what's still outstanding and amend the budget using our wonderful finance team to actually approve that these increases that we need to use and then set our budget and set our fiscal outlook for what we need to do, especially as we think about what might need to be done in the legislative session. And I know that we did a lot of work on superintendent goals. We're very close, but we're not there yet. And that we'll continue to work on those so that we make sure that those are reflective of the work that only we can do and reflective of what we think needs to be done. And so I know that school started, I've got my 3 kids started their classes, they love everything. They love their teachers, they love their paras, but we still got to remember that we have work to do before we go off judging science fairs or do anything like that, all the fun stuff that we got to make sure we wrap up the important board work stuff and start our wonderful policy reviews that we have upcoming. So that is it, my report.
So first, I'd like to start with thanking all those who helped us start off a successful first week or so of school now. I know there's a lot that goes into that of making sure that our students have a good first day and a first week. So thank you to all those who started that. I do have a statement that I'd like to read. I have served on the Kent Board of Directors for 11 years, and prior to that, I've served on local, regional, and state levels of PTA for 20 years. In those years, I think those who know me can attest to the fact that I have served without personal benefit other than the civic and personal satisfaction of striving to make a positive difference in the lives of our community and our children and their families. Although the education system exists for children, children can only be served by well-caring, competent educators, so I have always striven to protect and serve teachers to the greatest extent possible. Education is important to me and to my family. One of my sons even chose to go into education and is in his first year of teaching. I understand the significant part of my responsibilities as an elected official on the school board is to meet our statutory task of adopting a balanced budget and, second, to adhere to the basic principles of fiscal responsibility, which includes making sure that the decisions we make today are sustainable in the future. This is something that we as a board and a district must work together to do. I was extremely saddened to hear that some called for my resignation, citing untrue facts. I am committed to continuing to work and serve with my fellow board members, community, and staff to raise the bar of our district and to support our students as we strive to successfully prepare all students for their futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. All right. Okay, so I just have a few events wanted to mention. I wanted to first thank the staff at Kentwood. I got to spend a day with some teachers and talking about therapy dogs and our special ed students and what we can do as a collective community to help our kids who are really suffering from trauma and various issues, and I appreciated the opportunity to be there and to listen. Our teachers have so many ideas, and I wish there was a better outlet, where we can actually have a forum of sorts, on what we could do to help all of our kids. So I thank them for that. I wanted to again mention the WASDA Legislative Assembly. I'll be going on the 21st and the 22nd, and I look to my board members for guidance on some of the priorities we need to talk about and some of our the regionalization factor and how we can represent South King County specifically. And then I wanted to give a shout out to our communications team and the plan that we're working on a board communication plan that's never happened before. It's a first, and the help that all of the team have been giving us. It's really commendable, and we all have input into it. So we're excited that we're holding ourselves accountable in that respect as well. There are things that the public has asked of us, and we are incorporating quite a bit of that into the communication plan. And in addition, we talked about a fiscal recovery task force, and that is also in the process. We're waiting for our final budget numbers and revising our objective on that particular one. But we have some ideas on the application process and the press release that'll go out and inform the public about it, and the folks that we would like to have in that particular task force help us with monitoring and the oversight of our finances moving forward. So those are the things that are in works, and I want to address one specific thing that happened at our last August 22nd meeting. Trying to remember the dates. We did talk about the superintendent contract, and there was quite a bit of confusion around that. And so I wanted to give my colleagues an opportunity to have a discussion about or ask questions, or not get into the weeds of the contract itself, but sort of think about, the whole validity of the contracts and what were the issues that we were struggling with in not coming to any agreement at the dais. So I don't know if anybody would like to comment, thoughts.
So point of clarification, so we did approve the contract, so it was voted on, and the majority approved it, so you're just asking for additional clarification?
I'm saying that the public is confused about the contract, and I think our board members are confused as well. So this is an opportunity to speak about that.
Yeah, to be clear, I was confused about a few things because I believe there was some discrepancy in previous contracts or something like that. So I think, I know that it's been suggested to actually have a second legal opinion about it, and I think that's a good idea in particular because I think moving forward we need to just to determine the validity and the effectiveness of the contract. I think there was some confusion. So I, for one, would like to see something like that so that I can be clear and protect everyone involved. So.
And I know when we worked on the addendum, I think we all, it might have ended up where we intended it individually, but as, especially as we got through a couple days prior and then the discussion there were points that we weren't clear on. I think they can be clarified and we can come to this is just what it is. Either this was a mistake or this just wasn't the right thing to look at. We can all agree to it, but again, I don't think we're even at that point now. Personally, I think there's some items that I disagree with, both from what we've talked about, just as an interpretation, and from a legal interpretation standpoint as well. I think that could be viewed a different way, but I'm not a legal expert, so I don't make those opinions, but I think we can clarify what it is officially based on what our intentions were.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to clarify what our intentions were, and if there's a discrepancy in the dates or whatever, just get it cleared up.
Yeah, I don't think that we're saying that we're not, that we're getting rid of the contract. I think we're just saying we need some clarification on some things, I believe is what we're saying. Because we do have a valid contract that's in place right now. So.
Right, clarification that we had a valid contract. What was that contract? That we have an addendum to that contract. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
So I would like to be sure. I'd like to get some clarification on that. Okay.
Yeah, I think the interpretation of it is very different. What I saw and why I voted yes is very different from maybe what you or Karen may have voted for. So I think the dates are very confusing, and I do think we need an attorney to look at it, because that's an issue that we're not so getting a second opinion on that. So if we're all in agreement, I'd like to move forward with that.
I would say going back through, because I spent some time looking at dates all the way back from 2013 on contracts, and I can see where even going back from 2013 and looking at other ones and dates, where it could be very confusing. So I think getting a second legal opinion would be fine.
Okay, all right. All right, so with that, if anybody else has any other comments, concerns? Yep. We are adjourned, okay? Thank you very much for all of you to coming, attending, and have a good evening.
No, need a pen. I'm assuming we do need a pen. We